Story 1, you need to enter your age on a website, and you have to scroll like you are playing The Price is Right. Story 2, I have a cardiologist, a nephrologist, a neurologist, an oncologist, a dermatologist, and a primary care physician. Story 3, you get deeply into gardening. You start planning it in the fall. By early spring, the interior of your house is filled with seedlings under grow lights. You religiously check the weather forecast and consult gardening guides to determine when to start planting outdoors. You are in a constant battle against squirrels. You gossip about how your neighbor cheats by buying tomato plants instead of growing them from seed. By summer, every family member is required to eat at least one cucumber, one tomato, and a cup of greens daily to keep up with the harvest. You claim to save money by not buying produce at the grocery store, but you refuse to track expenses because the automatic watering system you just bought would cover 3 years' worth of produce for your family. Story 4, I am a high school teacher. Early in my career, it was important to me that the students understood that I know about and am also interested in all of the popular activities among young people. One day, I found myself purposely calling TikTok tiki-taki and enjoying how much that made my students cringe. I knew in that moment I was officially old. Story 5, when you make involuntary noises just standing up or sitting down. For example, I did not authorize that sound, it just came out. Bonus points if you start getting excited about home appliances or finding a good parking spot. Story 6, when traveling through areas you spent time in during your youth, you are compelled to point out the things that are different from when you were there. Caught me off guard how little I could resist doing it. It is openly known that nobody else is interested in how things used to be. They do not care. I know they do not care. Honestly, I do not even really care. But I am going to say it, and they are going to hear it. So they humor me and let me get it out of my system so we can enjoy the peace once again. Story 7, telling children. When I was young, we did not have everything you have now. I just explained to my children that we had to unplug the telephone to use the internet. Story 8, when you do not recognize any of the musicians or the songs in the top 40 list. When you watch a sports event and the athletes are young enough to be your children or your grandchildren. Story 9, when people reach their late 60s and 70s, I have noticed that most begin to shrink their world and retreat into their homes. Travel becomes too much of a hassle. Traveling at night is scary, traffic is frightening, crowds are intimidating, and weather can be harsh. Young people do not particularly like these things either, but they do not let them stop their activities. As people age, the list of conditions required to leave home grows until they do not go out much anymore. Story 10, go into a crowded bus and someone offers you their seat. You start receiving in the mail advertisements for savings on prepaid cremation, so you are not a burden on loved ones when you die. Story 11, all the professions that you used to look up to, such as doctors, athletes, and pilots, now seem like children. Story 12, I no longer care. I do not care about modern trends. I do not care about impressing everyone around me. I do not care about posting online about the things I do to show people how cool I am. I am just happy to live my life. It is incredibly liberating. Story 13, my niece was born when I was 16. I did not feel old. My niece became a mother when I was 38. Okay, I am a great uncle. My age is showing. My grandniece had a child when I was 60. Okay, I am old. Story 14. For me, it was having a bunch of medicines. I had headache medicine, nasal spray, medicated powders, stomach medicine, and many others. Story 15. When you stop talking fondly about how things are going to be and start talking fondly about how things used to be. Story 16. I was chatting with a very attractive young woman. We were equally outgoing. She was funny and made me laugh. She laughed at my jokes. The vibe between us was perfect. Then it happened. I said something funny, and as she was chuckling, she said, "You were funny. You remind me of my father." Silence. Story 17. You go to the kitchen to get something you desperately needed 5 seconds ago. But when you get there, you instantly have no clue why you went into the kitchen. Story 18. New music does not sound like music. You do not understand what the children are saying since it sounds like another language half the time. Story 19. No matter how much sleep you get, you always feel like you could sleep if you just lay down for a while. Story 20. You lose your vision and then it seems like you lose your hearing. Most people over 70 I know have glasses and hearing aids. Story 21. You want to go to bed at times you used to go out. Everything starts to randomly hurt or your eyes change and you cannot see up close. All these things make me feel old. It is okay. I am growing up and growing old. I am one of the lucky ones. Story 22. You cannot remember the name of anyone you went to high school with, but you are nostalgic about the price of gasoline when you were in high school. Story 23. I bent over to pick up a dog toy on Monday morning and injured my lower back. I have been off work for 4 days and have spent all 4 days going to the chiropractor. I am 34 years old. Story 24. You hear a song from your childhood that you thought was released a few years ago on a classic rock station. Story 25. You will come to a point where you realize you cannot remember the last time you were not at least a little bit tired. Story 26. I had tickets for an intimate Metallica concert with only a few thousand people, but decided not to go because of traffic. Story 27. I am only 19 at the time of writing this, but Generation Alpha is already using slang and jokes I do not understand. Story 28. You know that you are getting old when you wait until July, when the temperature of the pool is 90 degrees before you jump in. Young people jump in on May 1st when the temperature is 78 degrees. I cannot wait to jump in on July 1st. I am old. Story 29. 6 shots knocked me out for 2 days. In the first year of undergraduate studies, I was among the top 5, the last person standing on our dorm floor. Story 30. I started stretching daily, but because of cramping, I began placing my toes at a 90-degree angle, so my toes are not straight as usual. I also exercise my ankles, knees, and arches, which is new. 60 seems to be when I slowed down. I am 63 now. Story 31. In the early 1980s, I thought my mother's music was so old. You know, the Beatles, Elvis Presley. Now, to realize that my 1980s music, like Depeche Mode and New Order, is much older than that hurts. Hard. I'm sorry, Mom. I understand now. Story 32. Always something going on with your body and genuinely not wanting to go out. Just super content being at home with absolutely no fear of missing out. Story 33. Waking up takes longer. Not because you are tired, but because putting weight on your legs hurts or your back needs to realign. Going out is not the same. It is rather annoying. Driving. I used to go as fast as I could, drive recklessly, and not care. Now I drive the speed limit, buckle up, and relax. There is no point in being in a hurry to get to work. It will still be there. Drinking. I used to drink to dance, to party hard, and prove I could outdrink everyone. Now I prefer a nice bourbon, sipping and relaxing with the 1 or 2 friends I have stayed in touch with. Traveling. I used to want to see everything and had to go fast just to do it all. Now I relax. I am on vacation. We do not need to rush. Story 34. You are a police officer and your partner is 10 years younger. You keep saying, I am getting too old for this. Story 35. If you are a man, then college girls look too young. Additionally, you talk to your male friends about minivans. They are very practical. Story 36. When I got annoyed at a professor's absence in college, the professor did not show on the first day of classes. Peers were acting like children, celebrating, "Yay, no school." Meanwhile, I was frustrated because this was the only section taught at the satellite campus near my house. If I had to transfer to a different section, it would be at the main campus, an hour away. This was already an evening class from 6 to 8 p.m. Not to mention, I was paying for this course, and the professor did not even show up. I was annoyed because this adjunct apparently forgot she had a class, and I faced the prospect of an even later evening while the children around me celebrated the professor's absence. Anyway, it all turned out well in the end. The professor was there for day 2 and we caught up. The college did not communicate well to her that she had a section, then yelled at her for missing it. Story 37. I don't know if that happens to everyone, but I have seen it among women like my grandmother, some coworker, and well, myself as of late. When you finish saying something, A little air escapes your lungs and ends up making a kind of humming sound. For example, have a nice weekend. Humming. Story 38. I am only 26, but my body aged twice as fast when I joined the army at 17. I have a damaged back and tinnitus. I cannot stand or sit for too long, while people my age are doing things I wish I could do. Story 39. Developing allergies and food intolerances that were not present before. I used to love shrimp, clams, and calamari, but now I am allergic to shellfish. Story 40. A sure sign you are getting old is when your body starts sending you the out-of-service message at the most inconvenient times. Erectile dysfunction is nature's way of reminding you that your warranty has officially expired. It is time to upgrade or at least learn some creative workarounds. Story 41. When the highlight of your weekend was buying $100 worth of storage containers, your YouTube algorithm brings you effective towel folding videos, and the idea of playing bingo is no longer done ironically. Story 42. When I enjoyed growing a mustache. White hair is popping up fast. Noisy people make me angry. I really enjoy being at home alone and avoid social gatherings a lot. I used to be very social and love parties. I started to enjoy gardening. Cigars and whiskey started to taste better and better. Calling just a few friends to drink wine and cook at home gives me ecstatic feelings. I have no idea who the top trending artists are now. Boys, jazz is very good. Soup is delicious. By the way, I'm 31 years old. Story 43. When you are not just laughing at the comments on this post but relating to every single one a little too much. Story 44. When you try to make a new password and resort back to your Microsoft Network Messenger password, which had the name of your crush, I love Jason for Eva. Story 45. I realized I was getting old when I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years in a Best Buy parking lot. I was leaving and he was going in. He asked me what I was shopping for, and I said a vacuum. He said that was what he was looking for, so we started talking about the pros and cons of various vacuums. He asked me a lot of questions about the one I got. 35 minutes later, he said, "You know, we just spent the last half hour in a Best Buy parking lot discussing vacuums. We're old, man." Granted, we were like 30 to 32, but the point stands. Story 46. I dated a woman 11 and a half years younger than me. I saw a picture of her with her 72-year-old mother. They were wearing the same old-fashioned shoes with no heels, designed for safety. Shaking my head. Story 47. Going for a meal with your significant other and, instead of going for drinks afterward, you both want to go home, put on your pajamas, and watch television. Story 48. Those old people sounds you made when you were young as an act to make fun of the elderly are no longer an act. You make old people noises involuntarily, for example, wheezing when laughing, groaning when getting up, loud yawns, and so on. Story 49. My back always hurts. I did not think much about that, but now my knees are starting to hurt, and it has dawned on me. Story 50. When you go to watch adult content and the screen somehow shuts off, and you see your face and gray hair and realize how much older you look, you stop watching because those people were not even born yet when you turned 18. People in their 30s look young to me. Story 51. I had an employee get upset with me because I used a period to end a sentence in a text message. He thought he was in trouble since apparently periods mean that you are mad. He is 20 and I am 32. Story 52. Knees and hips start hitching. The opposite sex no longer finds you attractive after years of constant intimacy. Minor injuries take much longer to heal. Memory accuracy begins to fail you. Always hurting, sometimes confused. Where am I? Why am I? My body hurts. I miss my children even though I see them when I am not at work. When many of your friends start dying. Story 53. For me, it is when I realize people younger than me are rediscovering things that I have already learned and moved past decades ago. For example, one thing that caught my attention was seeing a Reddit post about seeing a lot of misspellings on the internet lately. I realized this person was not around for the terms owned or kick and other misspellings that were so common they became memes. Story 54. I have noticed that millennials think whining is a right, not an annoying syndrome. It has been my observation that those who whine less are healthier in general. Please stop posting your memes about a pulled muscle and your boring Saturdays. Seriously, be quiet already for your health. Story 55. Judging by the fact you put old in quotations, I'm basing this on realizing you're not part of the up-and-coming generation anymore. I would say realizing you don't understand young people's slang anymore did it for me. Also, realizing the slang you grew up with has gone out of fashion. For example, nothing is lit anymore, but everybody goons, whatever that means. Story 56. You would prefer to go out in the morning for fun rather than at night. I know I would much prefer to go out to have breakfast rather than go out to have dinner. Story 57. Literally just a couple of hours ago, I had to explain to a mutual friend who was 21 that we did not have a central online portal to check grades, see the syllabus, take exams, and so on when I was in college. I graduated in 2014. She was shocked, quizzing me on how we turned in assignments, knew what assignments were coming up, or when exams were scheduled. I described how I would run to the library to print out my paper, panic to find a number 2 pencil for actual scantrons for every test, and how I had a hard copy syllabus in my binder. It absolutely blew her mind, like full jaw-dropped gasps. Story 58. I was tidying up my daughter's paperwork with her permission and found a happy graduation card to her from a sophomore fellow volleyball player. I showed it to my daughter and she said, "Now I feel old." She graduated high school in 2016. I laughed my old head off. Story 59-1. Songs you grew up with are playing in grocery stores or large clothing stores. You grunt when you stand. Sleeping in the wrong position causes pain. You no longer laugh at life alert advertisements. You need more time to stretch before workouts. A scent brings you nostalgia. You are not asked to go for a walk at family gatherings. You talk about medical conditions, doctor visits, or medications even though you are not in the medical field. Restaurants and bars do not ask for your identification. 10. Younger people call your music band shirts vintage. Story 60. The child at the till in CEX asked, "Are you sure this is the game you want because it is for the PlayStation 5? Why would I not know what I was buying?" Story 61. The body cracking every time you wake up, like you would crack your knuckles. Very selective about where I spend my social energy. Protective of weekends and cannot stand loud noises. Story 62. When you think you are dating Johnny Depp or Elon Musk online and find yourself sending them money with Amazon gift cards. Story 63. I can get down on the floor, but getting back up takes at least 2 minutes, one other person, a cane or surface nearby to push against, and a lot of rude swearing. I try not to get down on the floor anymore. Story 64. When you automatically start to hate anything new, I do not know if it is because I am getting older or just a product of the time. Story 65. Turning down the volume on the radio to see better. For example, I do this when I back out of my driveway. Story 66. Preferring to stay home on the couch with a blanket over my legs, the dog next to me, watching sports and eating hot soup rather than doing anything else. Story 67. Honestly, it just hurts a bit to walk. After a long shift at work, I am very sore. I am not young anymore. Story 68. The 2 hearts are not pumping as well anymore, and you find regenerative energy leaking from your extremities. Story 69. I am no longer interested in talking and do not care about what you have to say. I am just not interested, and you are interrupting my peace. Please go away and leave me alone. Story 70. My phone updated to the next major version, and I was upset that everything was different. I just turned 30. Story 71. Do your joints creak or pop sometimes? Do you need to warm up before working out when previously you could just begin? Story 72. I cannot eat like a disgusting person anymore. I used to eat a whole pizza by myself, but now I am done after 2 to 3 slices. Story 73. When you look at teenagers and think what a bunch of fools, even though you were probably the same at their age. Story 74. Wanting to tell young people how much older I am than them. I used to hate that when I was young. I used to think, who cares about how old you are relative to me? But now I have the urge to say, wow, I'm so old. I usually catch myself before it happens. The worst was working with some 20-year-old interns in my early 30s around 2018. they called Blink 182 classic. I bit my tongue and made no condescending or self-pitying comment. But I totally get it now. Story 75. The way children are raised is so different these days. Before anyone takes this personally, I am not saying the way kids are raised now is wrong. Some children do not respond well to discipline or simply do not have it. I see a lack of respect and no clear boundaries. I often observe kids talking back rudely when told things like, "Please do not run into the road and look for cars so you do not get hit." I also frequently see temper tantrums when children are told no. I knew better at that age. As a 25-year-old, I realize I am very old school, or at least that is what my elders tell me. There are many things that are very different from my toddler years. I was raised by abusive parents, so my experience is quite different. It took me about 20 years to understand that. I usually keep my thoughts to myself because it is not my business or my problem, but since you asked, I do not raise my son the way my parents raised me, not at all. However, it drives me crazy to see other children being allowed to walk all over their parents. I am not trying to attack anyone. This is not directed at anyone in particular. It is just something I see that frustrates me, though I try to let it go. My father would never have let me act that way, nor would my mother. My mother was scarier. My father was frightening. When my mother was mad, you better run far away so you did not exist in the same universe as her. Half of the kids I grew up with had parents like this. The other half had parents who let them run the streets. Many were pregnant by 16 and drug addicts by 18. I am from a small town. You were either considered a troublemaker or a well-mannered person. There was no middle ground. I would love to see more of the world to know this is not the case everywhere. Sorry for my brutal honesty. This is not the first sign of me feeling old, but definitely the most telling. Story 76. Eyesight declines after the age of 40. I had perfect 20/20th vision, but 2 days after turning 40, I found myself squinting to read texts on my phone. Every year, my prescription becomes stronger. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.